Now, to come to the second part of this presentation, we're going to talk about the book itself, right? Zanzibar, its history, the Omani Sultanate ruling the country, Vasco da Gama. That was part number one, right? Part number two, we want to talk about the book, right? The book is called Grave-Old Heart. Grave-Old Heart is written by Abdulrazak Gurnah. It was published by Bloomsbury in 2018. Abdulrazak, what can we say about him? Oh, he was born, I'm told, in 1948, December 20, 1948 in Zanzibar. So he left Zanzibar when he was around 14 or 15 years old, after the famous violence and cruelties which that emerged with the Zanzibar revolution we talked about. In that revolution, of course, it became a hunt. It became a hunt against people of Arab descent, people of Indian descent, those who have been trampling down the black population of Zanzibar. But it was not only, I mean, the massacre and the witch hunt did not only start and finish with the Indians and the Arabs. It also extended to people, black or not black, who have served the regime of the Omani Sultanate. And of course, people who were Muslims from Arab descent became the target of that revolution. And Mr. Gurnah was kind of caught up in that chase. So probably his parents hushed him, shall we say, to overseas. So that's how he arrived in the UK. He was around 16 or 15 years old when he left Zanzibar, right? He obtained, after having written about a couple of numbers, 700? No, that was 7. That's 7. I was thinking of another writer. So after a number of writings, of course, he obtained that Nobel Prize in December 7, 2021. So that Mr. Abdulrazak Gurnah. So far, I have read only 2 of his many books. I hope I would put my hand on the rest of the bibliography. Okay, good. Grave-Old Heart by Abdulrazak Gurnah. Bloomsbury, 2018 was the date of publication. So I will start. I broke the presentation into 3 parts, right? The first one is just the synopsis, if I said, a brief summary of the book. And then I would talk about, of course, the different incidents in the book. And the last part would be what we can do with that reading. Where can we go from that point on, right? Okay. So here is the synopsis, the short synopsis I've prepared for you. We start with the narrator. Salim, the narrator, brings to us the story of his family, right? The family is kind of caught up in the throes of pre- and post-independence Zanzibar. Before the December 1963, that's the date, the year when Zanzibar became a a constitutional monarchy, as we said in the first part. So before the December 93 constitutional monarchy brought about by independence, the island is a British protectorate. Okay, well, that's no news. That's not that information at all. It is a British protectorate governed by sultans from Omani descent. Right from page 1, Salim comes up with the riddle. It's kind of just like a riddle. We do not know. He's talking about a father who is not at home. He's 7, right? He's a young kid. Nobody has told him, but he's suddenly discovered that the father is no longer at home, and he's kind of been bombarding his mother with questions about Baba. Where is Baba? Can I go and see Baba? And the mother is trying kind of to dodge those questions all the time by just giving him white lies, as we call them. So the narrator comes with that riddle right from the start, why the father has left the family home. So the entire novel, from page 3 to page 249, is about that quest, okay? That quest that the narrator executes or carries out single-handedly. He tries. I mean, he does its utmost to decipher what nobody yes, he's trying to decipher a story that nobody tries to explain to him, right? His father, his name, the name's father is Masud. His father, Masud, has deserted the family abode. And it is a mystery for him. Still, the mother wouldn't explain to the boy what has happened to Baba. Okay. Even though we, the readers, we have suspicions about what may have happened in that family, because between the line we can read, we have suspicions. We suspect something untoward has happened in that family, but still we hate to point it out, because Salim hasn't told us, and the book hasn't told us either. So we are really drowning or swimming. We are just flirting with that riddle we talked about at the beginning. So we will not know the answer to the questions until we, the reader, reach page 244. You can see the suspense from page 3 to page 244. Actually, what has happened is that Salim's uncle is his mother's brother. He is named Amir. Uncle Amir, as he's called in the book. So Amir has been living in the home with them all together in the same house. Suddenly, Salim gets in trouble with the revolutionary authorities now. Remember, this is the revolution that started after independence, right? So we are in the thick of that revolution where people are being witch hunted, right? So Salim, I don't know what happened, got in trouble with those authorities. He's been working at a hotel called the Coral Reef Hotel, where he meets a young girl called Asha. But Asha, unfortunately for Amir, is the daughter of the vice president of the Socialist Republic of Zanzibar. He is accused of raping, I quote, raping, unquote, underage, quote and unquote, accused of raping underage Asha. He is bundled in a police car and straight to jail. So terrorized by the news, Saida is the brother. Saida is the brother and the mother of the narrator, and Saida is married to Masud, his husband. Saida's mother goes to see the authorities, tries to meet with the vice president, which she does not succeed to do, but meets Hakim. Hakim is the brother of Asha, the girl allegedly raped by Amir. So Saida meets Hakim, and Hakim very readily makes sexual advances to Saida. So he proposes her to share his bed with him or with her, to share. He proposes to become his girlfriend in exchange for the liberation of her brother. Despite the advice of a husband who tells her not to do it, because it's not going to be a one-night stand, it's gonna be a long-lived story. But Saida does not heed the advice of a husband and still go straight to accept the demand of Hakim. And of course, Masud, the husband, refuses to take on the shame and the humiliation of the whole deal. He decides to leave the house to Saida, Salim, and Amir, right? When this happens, Salim, the narrator, is just 7. So the father, all of a sudden, becomes a muted, homeless man, and Saida, a wounded and humiliated woman, who cannot redress the wrong she's done to herself, the wrong she's done to her family. We can read just a couple of lines here to see what it is, the humiliation that the husband has gone through. On line 30, we have got a short passage here. We can read line 30. This is the narrator, Salim, the narrator, speaking as usual. I read. My father no longer worked at the water authorities in Giulione. He had been dismissed from there, as usual, right? Those of Arab descent are being witch hunted, we said it. He had been dismissed from there. He was no longer a clerk in a government office. He lived on his share of the takings from the market stall where he worked for several hours every day. His hair and beard grew bushy, and then both began to show signs of grey, making his face glow darkly in that shaggy tangle. Later on the same page, he did not speak willingly and walked through crowds with his head lowered and his eyes deliberately vacant, not wishing to see. I was ashamed of his abjectness and lethargy, because even at the age of 7, I knew how to be ashamed. So we see the father. He's no longer the same person. There is kind of some very deep metamorphosis here. The father who's been a very happy, easygoing person, all of a sudden, he is become invisible to everyone. He's lost his dignity. He's lost his light. I mean, this is some sort of extinct soul we see roaming the streets of the capital city in Zanzibar. But the mother says also that, we also learn that the mother is sorry, but there is nothing she can do. There is nothing she can do to retrieve the situation which was theirs before the deal with Hakim. Page 43 tells us quite a bit on that situation I'm talking about here. Page 43. My mother shook her head again and was silent. It was because of what I did that he left, she said at long last. It was because of what I did that he left. He is the father, she said at long last. And I saw that she was reluctant to continue, that she would refuse to talk, even if I pressed, that the wretchedness of it was too much, that she would walk away and lock herself in a room and sob, as she had at other times when I had insisted to be told. I could not bear to hear her do that. I cannot undo, that's the mother speaking, I cannot undo what I have done. I did not know he would ruin his life, she said. And then the narrator, is Baba so sad because he still loves you, I asked. My mother glanced at me and smiled, no doubt amused by my naivety about the human capacity for hatred. You ask so many questions. I don't think so. Okay, that's page 43. So the mother has become psychologically destitute. The father is also completely disappointed. And disappointment, I think, is an understatement here. I mean, it's a total waste for everyone, right? That deal to save Amir's skin has really sapped the foundation of what was, after all, a happy family. Okay, so to finish that synopsis there, so Uncle Amir benefits from the favors of the authorities, right? Okay, he's released from prison, and not only is he released from prison, he is also given kind of some additional favors. He's given a scholarship to go and study abroad to become a diplomat, because he's become friends with Hakim, the very person who ruined Masud and Saida's home, right? So he's gone to the UK to study, shall we say. Then, as shall we say, as a payback, if we might say, to pay back his sister, whose sacrifice, honor and dignity for him, he decides to take in charge overseas studies, the overseas studies of Salim, his nephew. So he brings Salim to the UK to study law, and he promises to pay for his studies. But at the end of the day, Salim has never really accepted what Uncle Amir has the shame that Amir has brought into his family. So they would never get along so easily. So at the end of the day, that relationship will break up, and Salim would leave the house because he doesn't want to study law according to the will of Uncle Amir. So he just turned down the generosity, I quote generosity, the generosity of Uncle Amir. So that's the story. Okay, so we see where we start from and where we end, where we finish. Okay, so that's the first part, shall we say. The book is divided, broken up into just 3 parts, we might say. Part 1 runs from page 3 to page 53. It lays out, or it describes, just kind of a summary of that part. It lays out the family context of the story with a family tree that shows, though, that highlights the lives of the narrator's uncle, grandpas, right? It is in that part that we learn about it's a kind of a global perspective of the entire family. We have got there, of course, the grandpas of Salim, the narrator. From the fatherly side, we have got Uncle Babu. In Swahili, Babu is grandfather, right? Babu Malim Yaya is a scholar, a teacher, specializing in Islamic studies. That is the father of his father, right? Malim Yaya. He will intervene in the book later on to save his son, who is Salim's father, Masud. He will save him from becoming a rover, a homeless hobo. He will bring him to Kuala Lumpur, Indonesia, because he himself is from Arab descent and he's been chased by the revolutionaries. So he's an exile in Kuala Lumpur. So he would save his son, Masud, out of the chaos created by the revolution. So that's the Babu, the first Babu. Then on the mother's maternal side, there is another Babu there called Hamed Musa Ibrahim. This is the maternal grandpa. And the maternal grandpa has been also a very vocal opponent to colonial authorities. So that was a long time ago, before Salim. So he has spoken out tremendously against colonial authorities, against the shall we say, the British, but also against the Arab elite, who has kind of has been squandering the resources of the country. For that reason, he was assassinated, right? Because of his vocal opposition to the authorities. He's been assassinated. And this is part of the game that Saida, Salim's mother, when he goes to sleep with Hakim to save Amir, because he's got in the back of his mind that idea that his own father was assassinated by the brutal regime in place. And he knows that the revolutionary regime in place is also as brutal as the colonial authorities. And she is definitely convinced that Amir, being from Arab descent, in the hands of the revolutionaries who hate people of Arab descent, she is persuaded, she is convinced that she is going to lose her brother too. That's why, I mean, the noise made around her by her husband Masud to try to stop her for committing what is irredeemable, just to save the skin of his brother. That's why she doesn't listen. She doesn't pay attention because she's been hurt once and she doesn't want to be hurt twice. So she is bound to save Amir no matter what it takes. And what it takes is, of course, the total destruction of his family. Okay, so that's part number 1, from page 3 to page 53. The smallest part, we might say. Part 2 goes from from page 56 to 164. This is the largest, the biggest chunk of the book. So that second part describes, shall we say, the economic, the sentimental, or the emotional ups and downs. Sorry about that. The ups and downs of the narrators in the UK, because he is in the UK now, right? You remember he's been brought there by his uncle. But then they divorced, if I might say. They would part, and Salim would continue as a student in literature, working in supermarkets, working at night to pay for his studies. So he's in the UK, but he's going through ups and downs, so we might say. He's met but a number of girls, he's met a number of students from Nigeria, from the West Indies, from India, etc., etc. So this is his experience in the UK, basically. That second part is also some sort of an epistolary part, because he's writing a lot. He's writing a lot to his Baba. He's writing a lot to his mama at the same time, right? So this is the second part, talking about his experience. Probably this is the experience of exile that Abdulrazak Gurnah talks about, because is actually defined as a writer a writer about exile and refugees. This is what people say mostly. So that's part number 2. Part number 3 goes from page 167 to 261, 64 pages in total. So that part is about Salim's trip back home after staying in the UK for something like 10 years or so, 10 years or more. He decides to come back home, because in the meantime, while he was in the UK, his mother has died of a stroke, and his father is still alive. Okay, you see what I mean? So he comes back home because in the meantime, his father has ended his stay in Kuala Lumpur when he heard the news of the passing away of Saida, his former wife. He comes back home. We do not understand why he comes back home, but comes back home after the death of his wife and goes back to the shack he was living in when he left the house. Okay? So he retrieves, he goes back to the life he used to have. He was better off in Kuala Lumpur, but he decided to come back. I will have an interpretation of that return back home where is his psychological misery? but he comes back. So Salim in that part also comes back home to talk to his father because he really wants to know what exactly went wrong between him, the father, Masud, and his wife, Saida. That story has never been told. Or it's been told, but through behaviors, silences, innuendos. But it's never been told. So he comes back with the hope that somebody, his father at least, will tell him that story entirely. Okay? So that's the last part of that book. A bit earlier on, we talked about exile, we talked about the revolution, we talked about Amir in the hands of Hakim and the vice president. We talked about the persecutions. We talked about how the revolutionary government is stripping the Indian, the Arab elite from their own positions. Their banks have been nationalized. 1963 is really chaos. It is that very chaos which sent Abdulrazak away while he was still a teenager. And I thought it would be interesting to read an extract of the speech that Abdulrazak Gurnah delivered in Stockholm at the Swedish Academy when he was granted that Nobel Prize of Literature in 2021. The precise date, the exact date is December 7, 2021. This is one extract I wanted just to share with you here. Can I find it here? Yes, here. I guess he is talking about why he's been writing books like his. One answer he gives is, in the first instance, this is Mr. Gurnah speaking, I reflected on what I had left behind in the reckless flight from my home. This reckless flight reminds me of the flight at the end of the book. Salim, the narrator, organizes to go back to the UK. Hakim, the man who has impregnated, we didn't talk about that, his own mother, because his mother has given birth to a girl whose father is none the less than Hakim, right? The girl's name, we did not give the girl's name. Well, I will find it later on. So, to continue, I reflected on what I had left behind in the reckless flight from my home. A profound chaos descended on our lives in the mid-1960s, says Gurnah, whose rights and wrongs were obscured by the brutalities that accompanied the changes brought about by the revolution in 1964. So that revolution was a complete chaos. He goes on. Detentions, executions, expulsions, and endless small and large indignities and oppressions. In the midst of these events and with the mind of an adolescent, it was impossible to think clearly about the historical and future implications of what was happening. Later on, he says, it became necessary to make an effort to preserve that memory, to write about what was there at the time, to retrieve the moments and the stories people lived by and through which they understood themselves. It was necessary to write of the persecutions and cruelties which the self-congratulations of our rulers sought to wipe from our memory. So then we understand why these violences do not come to the fore. They are between the lines. You can see in the behavior, in the reaction of people within the book, we can feel the fear, the trauma, the trauma that Saida feels when her brother is arrested. I mean, for her, it is a total loss. If nothing is done, the brother is going to disappear and die. Because people have been, had been at the time of the revolution, were being shot in the street for a yes or a no. So this is the atmosphere of terror that Gurnah has tried to put in calmly in words. So you can feel with the behavior, the fear, the trauma of the people, the characters, what really happened in that country, Zanzibar, right? So it was important to mention that book, and we can even go back to the other book, Afterlives. History is something that Gurnah is very keen on. He doesn't want those things just to rescind from people's memory. He wants those things to stay there, and so he's putting them in writing. Okay, that is our part number 2. We have got one more part